a French politician and a German major, an American lieutenant and an SS captain, all fighting together. This was not an alliance, it was an impossibility. They battled fanatical SS units, defending France's highest-ranking prisoners from execution. The official records almost erased it. By the spring of 1945, Castle Itter held an extraordinary collection of human beings. Paul Reynaud, 66, former Prime Minister, had led France in 1940. He refused Germany's armistice. He was arrested, then locked away. Next to him, Edouard Daladier, 60, his predecessor. Daladier had signed the Munich Agreement in 1938. He earned the label coward. He and Reynaud were bitter enemies, separated by a stone wall. They refused to speak. Generals Maxim Weygand, 78, Supreme Commander in 1940, and Maurice Gamelin, 72, the man Weygand replaced, also refused to speak. Others included Marie-Agnès Cailloux, 55, General Charles de Gaulle's sister, arrested for resistance work, Michel Clemenceau, 71, son of France's World War I leader, Léon Jouhaux, 65, head of France's largest labor union, imprisoned with his partner, Auguste Bruchlin. He would later win the Nobel Peace Prize. François de la Roque, 59, a complex figure, sometimes collaborator, sometimes resistance contact. Christian Mabier, Reynaud's secretary. Jean Barotra, 46, a Wimbledon tennis champion twice over in the 1920s. He possessed remarkable physical condition. He briefly served the Vichy government, then defected. Caught trying to flee France, he ended up in Itter. These were the prisoners. They had failed publicly. They argued. They blamed each other. SS guards learned to read the silences at their meal table. This medieval castle, high on a promontory, overlooked a Tyrolean village. Rebuilt in 1878, its fortress-like appearance was mostly decorative, but the old walls were thick. The single-track road leading up was steep. It offered easy defense. The Nazi regime took notice. In 1940, they leased the castle. Owner Franz Gruner had run it as a hotel. In February 1943, Heinrich Himmler himself ordered the SS to seize it. By April, Itter officially became a satellite installation of the Dachau concentration camp system. It was not a death camp, it was a Sonderlager, a special camp. It was a Sonderlager, a special camp, a place for Ehrenhäftlinge, honor prisoners. The regime viewed them as currency. They might be useful later at a bargaining table. Too valuable to kill, too dangerous to release, they were sent to the mountains. There, they were watched. On the afternoon of May 4, 1945, the war collapsed around Itter. Sebastian Wimmer, the SS camp commandant, got the news. Hitler was dead. The war was lost. Allied units were closing in. Wimmer did the math. He gathered his documents. He burned what he could. He loaded his wife into a car. Without a word to his prisoners, without any departure ritual, he drove out of the castle courtyard. He vanished down the mountain. The guards followed, some in trucks, some on foot. By evening, the castle was empty. The prisoners realized it slowly. No announcement came, no door opened, just the absence of orders. The men holding them for 2 years were gone. For a few hours they believed they were free. They were wrong. The forests around Castle Itter were not empty. They swarmed with Waffen SS units. Cut off from command, fanatical, armed. They hunted anyone showing a white flag. They sought out any Austrian uniform to hang from a lamppost. A man trying to walk down the mountain would not survive. A prisoner with a French accent and no papers would be shot on sight. The prisoners of Castle Itter were free of their guards but trapped in their castle. Reset beat. A Makrame, their freedom was merely a new, deadlier form of imprisonment. 2 days before, Zamini Herokofik, a Yugoslav resistance fighter and forced laborer, had slipped out of the castle. He carried a letter sewn into his clothes. He walked 40 miles through the night, and next day, he climbed the Inn Valley toward Innsbruck. By May 3rd evening he found them, an advance party of the U.S. 409th Infantry Regiment, 103rd Infantry Division, 6th Corps. He told them everything. He begged them to come. At dawn on May 4th, an armoured rescue column drove from Innsbruck toward Itter. It never arrived. Near Jenbach, halfway to its destination, the column took shell fire from an SS position. It stopped. It called for instructions. The orders came back, turn around. The reason was bureaucratic. The 103rd Division belonged to 6th Corps. The territory south of Jenbach belonged to XX Corps. The rescue column had crossed an invisible line on a map. Headquarters decided this violation could not be allowed. The mission was cancelled. The American tanks turned around. They drove back to Innsbruck. The prisoners in the castle knew nothing. They listened for sounds. They waited for help that was never coming. That was the moment Andreas Krobot got on a bicycle. He was a Czech cook in his 30s, thin from years of captivity. He wore threadbare kitchen servant clothes. The castle was never meant to be a prison. He pedaled as fast as his weak legs would allow. He hadn't eaten properly in weeks. The road was steep. His headlamp, blacked out, offered only a thin slit of yellow light. The valley was dark. Men with guns hunted deserters. In his pocket, wrapped in oilcloth, was a short letter, written in 3 languages. It begged for immediate help. It was signed by men whose names once filled Europe's newspapers. Now, these signatures rode into a valley full of SS patrols. They had orders to shoot anyone they didn't recognize. Krobot pedaled harder. He did not know if the war was ending. He only knew the people he fed would be dead by sunrise. He had to reach the town before the wrong man stopped him. 3 miles down the mountain, in Wogel, Major Josef Gang lived a lie. His soldiers called him Sepp. He was 34, a Wehrmacht major commanding what remained of the 25th Nebelwerfer Artillery Regiment. It was no longer a regiment, just a few dozen survivors, empty supply trucks, dwindling ammunition, haunted expressions. They knew the war was ending. They chose not to die pointlessly. Gangly was decorated. He served in France in 1940. He served on the Eastern Front. He earned the Iron Cross. He had done what was asked of German officers. He was promoted for it. But in the last year, something in him shifted. He began quietly, carefully contacting the Austrian resistance. He passed information to Robert Haglithner, who led a small cell in Vogel. Gangler sheltered his own soldiers from murderous orders. When SS units executed Austrian civilians for hanging white sheets, Gangler positioned his men in town. He made those executions harder. He did not desert. He did not run. He did something more dangerous. He stayed in uniform. He used it as cover. Each morning he gave orders for a regime he betrayed. Every evening he waited. He wondered if the Gestapo would knock. By May 4, 1945, his situation became impossible. Wogel was surrounded by roving SS units. They answered to no central command. The Wehrmacht in the area effectively ceased to exist. Gangl had perhaps 20 men he trusted. He decided to surrender to the Americans the moment they arrived. He waited. Then Andreas Krobot, exhausted, sweat-soaked, carrying his desperate letter, was brought to him. Signed by Daladier, Reynaud, Weygand. Gangly read it. He understood instantly. The SS would not allow liberation. They would kill the prisoners first. Units were nearby. There was no time. He made a decision. He would go to the Americans himself. Reset beat C. Piefert. From the silent betrayal of a regime to the desperate public gamble of a lone officer. 5 miles north in Kufstein, 27-year-old First Lieutenant John Jack Lee waited for the war to end. He was with the 23rd Tank Battalion, 12th Armored Division, XX Corps. His men described him as energetic, profane, fearless, impulsive. He chewed unlit cigars. He swore constantly. He fought across France and Germany. He survived the Battle of the Bulge. He crossed the Rhine. Now, in early May 1945, he sat in a Tyrolean village, his Sherman tank parked outside. Nothing to do. The German army ahead had vanished. Villages surrendered without a shot. The 36th Infantry Division was coming to relieve his position. Lee was tired. His men were tired. The war would end in 3 days. Everyone knew it. He had no idea a Wehrmacht major was driving toward him, under a white flag improvised from a bedsheet in a Kübelwagen. With the names of French politicians in his pocket, Lee was about to receive the strangest order of his career. It would come from an enemy. The American checkpoint at Kufstein on May 4th was not expecting visitors. The men on duty were tired beyond sleep. They had moved for weeks. They no longer believed in the enemy. Their roads were full of surrendering Germans, hands raised, eyes empty. Villages were quiet, the countryside bloomed. Then a vehicle appeared, a Kübelwagen, a German army staff car. It drove slowly. On its hood, tied to the radio antenna, a white sheet flapped. American soldiers raised rifles. They watched it approach. The driver was German. The passenger, a German officer in full uniform, the silver braid of a Wehrmacht major. He stopped 10 yards from the checkpoint. He raised his hands. He got out. It was Sepp Gangl. His English was halting but functional. He asked to speak with the commanding officer. Minutes later, he faced Lieutenant Jack Lee. Lee was 27, an unlit cigar in his mouth. He had seen German officers in defeat. This one was different. He had not come to surrender. He came to ask for something. No interpreter was present at first. Gangl explained, in short sentences, what was happening in a castle 8 miles south. He named the prisoners. The names mattered. He said Paul Reynaud. He said Edouard Daladier. He said Maxim Weygand. He said Maurice Gamelin. He said Charles de Gaulle's sister. He watched Lee's face with each name. He explained the SS was coming. The castle would not hold. He offered his soldiers, Wehrmacht soldiers, 10, maybe 12, veterans, armed, maybe 12, veterans, armed, ready to fight. They would obey him. He offered them. He offered himself. He wanted nothing in return but permission. Lee listened. He did not interrupt. Gangl finished. Lee listened. He looked at him. No manual covered this. No precedent existed. No senior officer was present to ask. Only a German major. An empty cigar. A story. If true, men whose names filled history books would be murdered. In a stone castle. Because the US both army drew the wrong line on a map, Lee asked one question. Would Gangl lead him to the castle right now? Gangl said yes. Reset beat key. Pivot from the bureaucratic absurdity of military lines to the singular human decision to trust a wartime enemy. They got into the Kübelwagen. Gangl, Lee sat in the passenger seat, sidearm on his lap. They drove to see what was there. The drive took under half an hour. The road climbed through pine forest, alpine meadows. Scenery men about to die did not notice. They passed 2 checkpoints. At the first, German soldiers loyal to Gangl waved him through. At the second, 2 Wehrmacht men stared at the American officer. They stepped aside silently. They reached the castle late morning. Lee got out. He looked up at the walls. He made his calculations. The single approach road. The height. The windows. How to defend them. He pictured the SS coming. He couldn't estimate their numbers yet. He did not go inside. Not yet. He returned to Kufstein. Work remained. Lee was a junior officer. He held no authority to commit American forces. But units were moving. An opportunity existed. The 142nd Infantry Regiment, 36th Infantry Division, the Texas Division, had just arrived in Kufstein. They were fresh. They had armor. They had ammunition. They were what Lee needed. He went to their commanders. He told his story. He kept it short. He asked for tanks and infantry. He got 5 Sherman tanks, a company of riflemen. He had what he needed. The column rolled out early afternoon. It got 4 miles down the road. It got 4 miles down the road. It stopped. A bridge. Small. Wooden. Over a mountain stream. Not built for 5 Sherman tanks, or a supporting infantry column. Lee got out. The lead tank driver got out. They walked across. The boards groaned. The supports were thin and old. The math was simple. 1 Sherman might hold, 5 would not. Even if 5 crossed, they wouldn't cross back. Not under fire, not with damaged vehicles, not with wounded. Lee made his second decision. He left 1 tank at the bridge. It would guard the crossing. He sent the rest of the column back. He kept his own Sherman, Besotten Jenny. Her name was painted in messy white letters. The crew loved her, the way a man loves what kept him alive for a year. He kept 14 American soldiers. He kept Gangal. He kept the truck carrying 10 Wehrmacht veterans, men who served under Gangal, men who agreed to drive into battle. On the wrong side of a war they fought for 5 years. That was the force. 26 men, 1 tank, 1 truck, 1 officer chewing an unlit cigar, 1 German major leading the way. Reset beat pant down. A single tank and a desperate handful of men were now the only thing standing between political prisoners and total annihilation. 4 miles from the castle they found the first SS roadblock, small, hastily assembled. Trees dragged across the road, a few men with rifles in the trees. Besotten Jenny's machine gun opened fire first. German soldiers in the truck dismounted. They moved through the woods on the flank. Disciplined. Good infantry. The SS men at the roadblock either died or ran. It was over in minutes. That was the first time in recorded history. American soldiers and German soldiers fired weapons at the same target. No time to think. The column moved on. They arrived at Castle Itter late afternoon. The gate was open. The courtyard was empty. Prisoners watched from windows. They came out slowly. They did not fully believe what they saw. An American Sherman tank rolled into the courtyard, the thing they prayed for. Then a Wehrmacht major in full German uniform, alive, armed, giving directions to American soldiers, as if he belonged. Some prisoners stopped walking. They didn't know what to make of it. Then a third unexpected thing happened. The prisoners had organized their own defense. The day before, when guards vanished, when women fled, they realized they weren't safe. They looked for a leader, someone with military training, someone they could trust. The man they asked was an SS officer. Captain Kurt-Siegfried Schrader. He had been wounded earlier, recuperating near the castle. He had become friendly with the French prisoners. They ate meals together, walked in the garden. He treated them as people, not captives. They remembered. When the guards left, they sent for him. He came. He brought his wife and children into the castle cellars. He believed they would be safest there. He agreed to organize the defense. Before any American or Wehrmacht officer arrived. When Lee and Gangler entered the castle's great hall, they found no helpless prisoners. They found a defense already half organized. By an SS officer. He had decided this was a line he would not cross. 3 uniforms, 3 armies. 3 armies meant to kill each other, standing in the same room, trying to keep the same people alive. The prisoners were grateful, but not satisfied. They expected an army. They received 26 men. Paul Reynaud, 66, dignified, formal, asked Lee how many more were coming. Lee told him the truth. No more today. Edouard Daladier stood in the corner. He did not approach. Lee made his dispositions. He was a tank officer, not infantry, but he knew defense. He positioned Besotten Jenny before the main gate, blocking the only approach. Her main gun pointed down the valley. American riflemen went to high windows, clear fields of fire. Gangler's Wehrmacht veterans took the south wall. The longest exposed perimeter. Schrader ran his own sector, with his own men. Lee had one more problem, the prisoners. The castle had an armory. SS guards had fled too fast to empty it. Submachine guns, rifles, grenades, ammunition. Lee did not want to arm the prisoners. They were old. Most weren't combat soldiers. Reynaud was a politician. Daladier a politician. Juho a union man. Boratra an athlete. Clemenceau a great man's son, not a soldier. But the 2 generals asked for weapons. Maxim Weigand, 78, former supreme commander. He spent 5 years in this castle. He thought of the country he failed to save. He asked Lee for a rifle. Without drama, like an old man asking for a chair. Maurice Gamlin, 72. Weygand's predecessor. They spent 5 years blaming each other. He asked for a weapon too. Lee gave them weapons. He gave weapons to others who asked. A submachine gun to Barotra. The Wimbledon champion could not work the action properly. A rifle to Léon Joho, the man who negotiated labor contracts. Now he stood at a stone window, a German rifle in his hands. A calm expression no one understood. Augusta Brooklyn, his partner, stood next to him. Dispositions were complete by evening. Then they waited. Reset beat C. Pfeffert, from the desperate formation of an unlikely defense, to the silent, personal battles fought within each man awaiting dawn. Gangl tried the telephone. The castle had a working line, an absurd remnant from when SS guards called for supplies. He reached the Austrian resistance in Vork. He explained. He asked for everything they could send. The answer, 3 men. 2 defected German soldiers. 1 Austrian teenager. He had walked into the resistance office that afternoon. He asked to fight. They were already on the way. 3 more bodies. That was the entire reinforcement available. In the last days of the Third Reich, for a battle not yet begun, night fell. Cold in the castle. Stone walls. Wind in the corridors. Men sat at positions. They tried not to sleep. Prisoners gathered in a great hall. Armed men separate from unarmed. Little conversation. Reynaud sat by a window. Christian Maybuyer beside him. A pistol on the table. He looked at it. Then out at dark mountains. Maybuyer put a hand on his arm. He didn't move. Daladier sat alone. Barotra leaned against a wall. Eyes closed. Breathing slowly. Like an athlete before a race. He was 46. Still had a tennis player's body. He would need it. Marie-Agnès Caillou moved among the wounded. The elderly. She insured blankets. She was 55. 2 years in this castle. Leverage against her brother. She moved with calm. Fear was useless. Outside in the dark, the SS moved. The unit climbing the mountain toward Itter at dawn, May 5, 1945, was the 17th SS Panzergrenadier Division, Guts von Berlichingen, commanded by Obersturmbannführer Georg Bachmann. These were not stragglers, not deserters, not isolated fanatics. They were an organized formation, Waffen SS infantry, supported by mortars, by machine guns, by at least one 88mm gun, a weapon that could destroy any American tank at range. Perhaps 100 men. Some accounts say 200. Defenders later said it felt like more. The attack began at first light. First shots from the tree line. Machine gun fire across open ground. Bizot and Jenny opened fire. Her 75mm gun fired twice. Shell explosions in the woods. So loud, villagers later said mountains shook. The SS infantry pulled back. They reorganized. They moved laterally through the woods. They sought dead ground, where the tank's gun could not reach. They began climbing toward the castle's flanks. Gangl moved between positions. Witnesses later said the same. He was calm, not performing calm, not hiding fear, simply calm. The way a man is calm after a decision is made, nothing left to fear. He moved among his soldiers, correcting firing positions, telling them where the SS would come from, speaking quietly. He did not need to repeat himself. Lee joined him on the wall. He would say later it was one of the strangest experiences of his war. He spent 2 years hating German officers. He killed men like Gangl. Yet here was a Wehrmacht major, in full uniform, running a defense alongside him. With competence Lee admired. The fight continued. Reset beat. Reframe. The battle for Itter wasn't just a clash of arms, but a silent dismantling of every enemy's stereotype. The SS brought up the 88mm gun. They positioned it on the slope. It was the heaviest weapon on the battlefield. It outranged everything the defenders had. The first shell from the 88 hit the courtyard. The second hit the wall. The third found Bizotten Jenny. She sat in the gateway. She took the 88 round directly through her hull. The interior caught fire. The crew bailed out, wounded, dragging each other clear. Before ammunition cooked off inside, the only armoured vehicle was gone. Inside the castle, the situation worsened. Ammunition ran low. American riflemen fired carefully, picking targets. Wehrmacht veterans on the south wall took casualties. The telephone line was cut. SS troops had figured it out. Gangley moved to the main gate. The fire was heaviest. He needed to see where the SS massed. He climbed to a window, a view of the approach road. Paul Reynaud was there, the former Prime Minister, firing his rifle badly. An American soldier helped him. He was 66, tired, exposed to an SS sniper. The sniper worked the slope for an hour. Gangley saw the sniper. Before Reynaud did, he reached out to pull the old man down, away from the window, to cover. That was when the bullet found him. Inside the great hall, men counted rounds, not many left. American riflemen, half a magazine each. Wehrmacht men, down to pistols. The SS was no longer pushed back. The SS climbed the walls. Lee gathered his officers, what remained, in the courtyard, near his burning tank. He gave the order no American commander wants to give. Fall back to the keep, fight room by room, hold the inner castle as long as possible. He believed they had an hour. That was when Jean Barotra, 46, Wimbledon champion, offered something insane. He would go over the wall. He would run down the mountain. He would find the Americans. He would bring them back. Lee looked at him. Lee looked at the wall. Lee looked at the woods, full of SS infantry, between Barotra and any chance of American lines. Lee said yes. Barotra went over the wall, on the backside, away from the main road, where the slope dropped steeply. So steep the SS hadn't posted men there. He wore his prison clothes. No weapon. Nothing but Lee's directions. And the knowledge of the nearest American unit. He hit the ground running. He was 46. 2 years in a castle. Limited exercise. Bad food. He hadn't run distance in years. But muscles remembered. Lungs remembered. He won Wimbledon twice. On legs like these. Now those legs carried him through pine forest. Austrian Alps. German soldiers in the trees. He did not stop. He could not. If he stopped, he would be seen. Reset beta. Reframe. The fall of the outer defense was not a defeat, but a desperate gambit for a single improbable chance. Behind him, the castle defense collapsed. SS pushed to outer walls. Grenades began sailing over them. Lee pulled most men back, into the keep. The inner sanctum. Corridors were narrow. SS would come 1 or 2 at a time. He set up firing positions. At staircases. Prisoners were in the deepest cellars. Behind locked doors. Sepp Gangley lay where he fell, near the window. The sniper's bullet found him. No time for last words. No time to know he was dying. One moment reaching for Reynaud. Next, on the floor. Reynaud survived. Because Gangley pulled him down, he stood. He looked at the German officer's body. He said nothing. Marie-Agnès Caillou moved through rooms, bandages and water, among the wounded. The sister of France's future leader, on her knees, in a stone corridor, washing blood from a wounded American's face. She did not know. The fight in the keep continued. It felt like a long time, probably less than an hour. Down in the valley, Jean Barotra reached the main road. He flagged a vehicle. It was an American jeep. Men from the 142nd Infantry Regiment, 36th Infantry Division, the Texas Division. They had moved toward Itter all morning, on their own initiative. From information received yesterday, slowed by SS resistance, Barotra explained, quickly, clearly, the prisoners. The SS force, Lee, he asked for an American uniform. They gave him one. He put it on. He got into the lead jeep. He pointed up the road. The column moved, led by Captain Harry Stiller, 142nd. Intelligence coordinated by Major John T. Kramer. Overall authority, Colonel George Lynch. These names mattered to the army. In after-action reports, they did not matter to men in the castle. What mattered? The sound of American armor. Coming up the mountain, the relief column hit the SS from the rear. Waffen SS troops, trying to break into Itter, were suddenly trapped between defenders above, a fresh American column below. The 88mm gun crew fled. Infantry on the walls tried to pull back. They had nowhere to go. The fight ended in minutes. About 100 Waffen SS men surrendered. The rest were dead or running into the woods. American tanks rolled into the courtyard. Approximately 400 Nomenandus, it was finished. When the firing stopped, men came out, slowly, into the courtyard, like people from cellars. After a long raid, blinking, deafened, unsure the silence was real. Lee was there, unhurt. Cigar still unlit. American soldiers and Wehrmacht soldiers stood. In the same courtyard, they did not look at each other much. They did not know what to say. Some shook hands. Most just stood. Paul Reynaud walked out. He looked at Sepp Gangel's body. Brought down. Laid out under a blanket. He stood. He took off his hat. Edouard Daladier stood across the courtyard. From him, for the first time in 2 years, 2 old enemies. In open air. Without walls. They still did not speak. Total casualties. 4 wounded. 1 dead. Sepp Gangli. French prisoners evacuated within hours, driven down the mountain. In American vehicles. They reached Paris May 10th. The war in Europe was over. Hitler had been dead a week. German surrender signed 2 days after the battle. Jack Lee was promoted to captain. Awarded the Distinguished Service Cross. The second highest decoration. The citation. Led a small force in the defense of a castle. It did not mention German soldiers obeying him. It did not mention trusting a Wehrmacht major. The army had no language for what he did. It still doesn't. Sepp Gangel was buried in Tyrol. Austrian government honored him. National hero of the resistance. A street in Wörl, where he lied to everyone, renamed Sepp Gangelstrasse. It remains so today. Kurt-Siegfried Schrader, the SS officer. He organized defense. He moved his family into cellars. He fired his weapon at men in his own uniform. He was arrested by Americans after the war for SS membership. Sentenced to 2 years. Sentence shortened. For his actions at Itter. He went home. Lived quietly. Died in 1995. Paul Reynaud returned to politics. Served in the Fourth Republic. Died 1966. Edouard Daladier served in the National Assembly. Died 1970. He and Reynaud never reconciled. Maxim Weigand tried for collaboration. Acquitted. Lived to 98. Maurice Gamelin wrote memoirs. Explained the fall of France was not his fault. Léon Jouhaux won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1951. Marie-Agnès Caillou wrote a memoir. Died 1982. Jean Barotra returned to tennis. Played senior tournaments. Into his late 70s. Died 1994. He was 95. Jack Lee went home to Norwich, New York. He gave interviews. Historians could not believe the reports. He was modest. Said he made the only decision possible. He died in 1973. He was 55. For decades the battle was unknown. It didn't fit. Not the categories of war. Not the books. A German major dying for a French prime minister. Defended by an American lieutenant. An SS captain organized from a cellar. This was not the story anyone was told. Reset beat direct college. This wasn't an anomaly, but the hidden truth of choices made when ideology failed. The records show, May 5, 1945,